The bullet found Corporal Martinez at precisely 10:47 in the morning. He never heard the shot, never saw the muzzle flash. One moment he was moving forward through the coral ridges, the Pacific sun beating down with brutal indifference. The next moment he was on his back, staring up at the canopy, feeling warmth spread across his chest that had nothing to do with September heat. Private Thomas Thayer reached him first, 20 years old, Boston Irish. Hands shaking as he pressed against the wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Martinez's eyes found Thayer's face. Confusion there, not fear, just the simple bewilderment of a man trying to understand what just happened. His lips moved. No sound. Then his eyes went somewhere else, somewhere Thayer couldn't follow. Sergeant Marcus Caldwell arrived seconds later, dropped to one knee, scanned the ridgeline ahead with professional eyes that had taught marksmanship for 2 years at Camp Pendleton. Nothing but limestone and jungle, gray rock, green vegetation, deep shadows where caves opened like wounds in the earth. Somewhere in that landscape, a man with a rifle had just killed his friend, and Caldwell had no idea where. He pulled Thayer down, kept them both low. "Where?" Thayer's voice cracked. "I don't know. Nothing. I saw nothing." Caldwell studied Martinez's body, entry wound, high chest. The angle suggested elevation, up on the ridgeline, but they had cleared that ridgeline yesterday, swept it twice, tagged it secure, or thought they had. The heat pressed down like a physical weight. 115 degrees in the shade, no shade, Caldwell's canteen empty since 0800, salt-crusted white at his mouth corners. 3 days on Peleliu, 3 days of a hell masquerading as a tropical island. This was supposed to take 4 days, clean operation, minimal resistance. Then on to the Philippines. Someone forgot to tell the Japanese. Caldwell looked at Martinez one more time, closed his eyes with fingers that wanted to shake but didn't. That made 7. 7 men in 3 days, all killed by fire they never saw coming, all dropped by an enemy that seemed to materialize from solid rock, take the shot, vanish back into the earth. "Get back to the line," he told Thayer. "Tell Captain Hayes we need a corpsman. Tell him Charlie 7 is still active." Thayer hesitated. "But Sarge, we cleared Charlie 7. I know what we did." 3 days earlier, the landing had been almost peaceful. September 12, 1944. Dawn breaking red over the Pacific. Caldwell stood at the rail of the Higgins boat, watching Peleliu emerge from morning haze. Coral beaches, dense jungle, ridges of limestone rising like broken teeth against the sky. Beside him, Corporal Robert Tenbrook cracked his knuckles. Big man, Montana bred, built like the bear that gave him his nickname. Before the war, he'd guided rich men on elk hunts through the Rockies. Now he hunted different prey. "Too quiet," Tenbrook said. Caldwell nodded, felt it too. The absence of resistance, the waiting silence. Lance Corporal Daniel Petrova stood at the bow. 23, Polish-American from Chicago. Photographer's assistant before Uncle Sam called. Even now his eyes swept the landscape with an artist's attention to light and shadow. Camera around his neck despite regulations. "You're not supposed to have that," Caldwell said. Petrova smiled. Shy. "Captain Hayes approved it, for morale, long as I don't photograph anything tactical." "Everything's tactical." "Then I'll photograph the sky." Behind them, Private Thayer wrote in a journal, always writing, documenting everything for the brother who'd gone missing in Europe. For David, presumed dead at Normandy, whose fate remained unknown, but feared. The boats hit beach at 0630. Marines poured out, weapons ready, expecting hell, getting silence, no resistance, no fire, just empty sand and wind through palm trees. They moved inland in perfect formation, textbook advance, into jungle, into ridges, still nothing. By noon they'd gained 200 yards, by evening 500, dug in, set perimeter, waited for the attack that never came. Caldwell sat in his fighting hole that night, stared at the dark ridgeline. Something felt wrong. The silence felt tactical, deliberate, like the island was holding its breath. Sarge, Private Davies approached, young, eager, fresh from training. Think they abandoned the island? No, Caldwell said. They're here, just waiting. For what? For us to walk into the trap. Davies was a good kid, reminded Caldwell of the recruits he'd trained stateside. Optimistic, believing the war would be like the movies. Caldwell didn't have the heart to tell him different. Davies would learn soon enough. The attack came at dawn on September 13th, not the bonsai charge they expected. Something worse, sniper fire from positions they couldn't identify. Mortar rounds from emplacements they couldn't spot. Marines falling to threats invisible and therefore unstoppable. Private Johnson went down first, shot through the head, never saw it coming. Private Lee followed an hour later, same story, clean shot, no muzzle flash spotted, no position identified. By evening they'd lost 5 more, including Sergeant Morrison, Caldwell's closest friend in the Corps, took a round through the throat while scouting ahead, bled out in Caldwell's arms. Morrison's last words were barely a whisper. Can't see them, Mac. Can't see them anywhere. Then nothing. Caldwell held him as he died, felt the pulse fade, felt the moment life became absence, took Morrison's dog tags, kept them instead of sending them back, needed to remember, needed the weight of it. That night, Captain William Hayes summoned him to the command post. Hayes was Old Corps, 35, Guadalcanal veteran, scar running down his left cheek from a Japanese bayonet that got too close. Hard man, fair man, caught between impossible orders and brutal reality. He spread a map on the field table. Regiment wants us to advance tomorrow. Full push. Caldwell studied the map, saw the killing fields waiting. That's suicide, sir. I know. 7 men dead in 2 days. We haven't spotted a single position. We advance blind, we'll lose 30, maybe more. Hayes's jaw tightened. You think I don't know that? Then why? Because those are the orders. Hayes looked away. They think we're not pushing hard enough. Want results by 1600 hours tomorrow. Caldwell felt cold settle in his gut. Results means dead Marines. I know. Hayes met his eyes. Mac, I can't protect you if you refuse a direct order. They'll relieve you, court-martial you, send someone else who'll get even more men killed. Outside the jungle breathed darkness. Somewhere out there, watching from hidden positions, the enemy waited. Give me 24 hours, Caldwell said. To do what? Find them. Hayes studied him. You have a plan? No, but I have people who might. Hayes looked at the map, at terrain that had swallowed 7 lives, at an island that was supposed to fall in 4 days. You have until 1800 tomorrow. Find something I can give regiment, something that shows we're trying. And if I can't, then at dawn the day after we attack anyway. Caldwell didn't sleep that night. Sat in his fighting hole staring at stars that didn't care about war or death, or desperate men trying to survive. Thinking about Morrison, about the 5 others whose faces were already starting to blur. There had to be a pattern, had to be something they were missing. He'd taught concealment at Camp Pendleton, knew the principles, but this was different. This was perfection. Positions that seemed carved into solid rock, firing ports invisible until they spoke, camouflage indistinguishable from nature. They had to be using optics, had to be. You couldn't shoot that accurately without glass, binoculars for observation, scopes for precision, and if they could see out. The thought didn't complete. Not yet. But something was there. Something at the edge of awareness. Morrison's dog tags pressed against his chest, still stained with his friend's blood. I'll find a way, he whispered to the darkness. I'll see them. Morning of September 14th dawned hot and merciless. Caldwell gathered his team at 0700. Thayer, Tenbrook, Petrova, plus Davies and 3 others, 8 men in a shallow depression behind limestone outcropping, natural cover, good sight lines. 7 men in 2 days, Caldwell said without preamble. Killed by an enemy we can't see, can't find, can't suppress. Anyone have ideas? Silence. The kind that comes when stakes are life and death and nobody knows the answer. Anything, Caldwell pressed. Any observation, anything at all. More silence. Tenbrook cleaned his rifle. Methodical. Thayer stared at Boots. Petrova looked at the ridgeline, then away, then back. Davies shifted nervously, started to speak, stopped. "Say it," Caldwell ordered. "We're past stupid questions." Yesterday morning on watch, I thought I saw something, probably nothing." "Tell me anyway." "A flash. From the rocks. Just for a second. Like light on glass." Caldwell felt his pulse quicken. "Where?" "Grid Charlie 7. Maybe, I'm not sure." Petrova sat up straight. "I saw it too. This morning. Before dawn. Same thing. Like sunlight catching broken glass." Tenbrook stopped cleaning his rifle. "What kind of flash?" "Not weapon flash," Petrova said. "Different. Scattered like damaged glass reflecting light." Tenbrook stood. Big frame blocking sun, eyes suddenly intense. "I know what that is." Everyone turned. "Montana. Tracking elk through heavy brush. Sometimes you can't see the animal, but you can see how light catches their eyes. That specific reflection. Different from vegetation, different from rock. You learn to recognize it." He looked at Caldwell. "If they've got optics up there, binoculars, scopes, and if the glass is damaged from near misses, from concussion, the morning light would catch it." The realization hit Caldwell like electricity, every synapse firing, years of training converging on this single point. Glass. Every observation post needed glass to see, and glass reflected light in ways vegetation and rock never could. Properties that couldn't be hidden. "Damaged glass," he said, thinking out loud. "From 3 days of artillery, from small arms fire, would scatter light differently than intact glass. Makes it more visible," Tenbrook added. "Not less. Cracked glass catches light from more angles, holds it longer." Caldwell's mind raced. If they have optics at every position, and they'd need optics for this accuracy, then every position has glass. If we could scan for those reflections, systematically at the right time of day when sun angle is optimal. "We could map them," Thayer said quietly. "Map positions invisible to naked eye." Silence. But different now. Charged. Davies spoke up. "But Sarge, we can't just stand out scanning. They'd hit us." "We don't stand in the open," Caldwell replied. "We use terrain. Observation points with cover and sight lines. Early morning, late afternoon, when sun is low enough to create horizontal light." He checked his watch. 0745. Hayes's deadline 1800 today, less than 11 hours. 1630 hours, he said. "When afternoon sun drops low, we'll have 2 hours of optimal light. That's our window." The hours crawled. Caldwell spent them planning. Grid system, observation points, sun angle calculations, communication protocol, everything that might make the difference between success and failure. Thayer helped with documentation, neat handwriting, organized mind. Davies ran communications, eager to contribute. To matter, Tenbrook and Petrova scouted positions, verified sight lines, made sure they wouldn't be exposed. By 1400 they were ready, 2 teams, 2 positions, clear sectors, good angles. Caldwell gathered them one more time. "This might not work, might be chasing shadows, but it's the only idea we have." "It'll work," Tenbrook said, simple confidence. "How do you know?" "Because it has to." At 1600 hours they moved into position. Caldwell and Thayer left side. Tenbrook and Petrova right, separated by 100 yards. Good coverage. Caldwell settled into his spot. Natural depression, good overhead cover, clear view of western slopes. Positioned so afternoon sun would be behind them, shining across their front, perfect for catching reflections. He raised binoculars, started scanning, grid by grid, methodical. At first nothing, just jungle and rock, green and gray, natural chaos. 1610, nothing. Beside him, Thayer scanned in silence, recording coordinates, time, distance estimates. 1615, nothing. 1620, nothing. Caldwell felt doubt creeping. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe Petrova and Davies had seen mineral deposits, wishful thinking disguised as insight. Then Petrova's voice came low across the gap. Contact, grid Charlie 7, glass reflection, 200 meters, elevation 20 meters. Caldwell swung binoculars to Charlie 7, scanned. At first nothing. Then there, a flash, brief, 2 seconds, like sunlight catching broken mirror. Gone almost before he registered it, but real, undeniable. Confirmed, he called back, marking Charlie 7. Thayer wrote it down. Time 1623. Duration 2 seconds. Character diffuse. They kept scanning. 1628. Grid Delta 4. Different area. Same reflection type. 1632. Grid Echo 9. Stronger. Lasted 3 seconds. 1640. Grid Bravo 12. The flashes kept coming. Not many, not obvious. But there, brief glimpses of glass where there should have been only rock. By 1712 positions identified. Caldwell felt something he hadn't felt in 3 days. Hope. Keep scanning, we've got another hour. They scanned harder, faster, more confident now. 1715, 3 more positions. 1730, 5 more. 1745, 4 more. The sun dropped toward western horizon, light shifting, creating new angles, new opportunities. Caldwell's sector lit up with reflections, like someone switched on lights across the ridgeline. Tiny flashes, brief glimpses, but everywhere. Jesus, Thayer whispered. They're everywhere. Caldwell's hands shook. Adrenaline, exhaustion, weight of what they were seeing. 1800 approached, light fading, reflections harder to spot, but still there. Still visible to men who knew what to look for. 1815, last clear reflection. 1820, light too far west, shadows too long. Caldwell lowered binoculars, hands cramping, eyes burning. Count! Thayer flipped through pages. At 43 from our position, Tenbrook and Petrova coming over. Tenbrook and Petrova arrived, Petrova's hands shaking, eyes wide. 30, Petrova said. 30 separate positions. Caldwell did math, cross-referencing overlaps, a total unique positions, 73 silence, 73 concealed positions, less than 1 kilometer, some separated by barely 20 meters, a network so complete that any advance would have been slaughter. Thayer's voice barely audible. We would have walked right into it. Caldwell looked at the marked map, at the density, at the overlapping coverage, at the genius of whoever designed this defense. We've been fighting blind for 3 days, walking through a designed kill zone. They've been watching us, waiting. Tenbrook studied the map. At least 10 of these are in areas we declared clear. They never left, or they came back through tunnels. Davies pointed to a cluster on the eastern ridge. This section, where Lieutenant Harrison's platoon tried to advance yesterday, they made it 50 meters before pulling back. Caldwell remembered. 26 men forward, 12 back, the rest wounded or dead. Now he knew why. He checked his watch. 1830, half hour past Hayes's deadline. But he had something. Something real. Thayer, get this to Captain Hayes, now! Thayer grabbed the map and sprinted. Caldwell sat, legs suddenly weak. 3 days of tension releasing. Morrison's dog tags pressed against his chest. Found them, Morrison, he whispered. Took us long enough. 10 minutes later, a runner arrived. Captain Hayes wants to see you, immediately. Hayes stood over the marked map like a man studying his own death warrant. Lamplight threw shadows across his scarred face. Outside jungle breathed in darkness. Glass reflections, he said. Statement seeking confirmation. Caldwell stood at attention. Yes, sir. 73 confirmed positions, 2 independent teams, cross-referenced for overlap. I need more than theory. Regiment wants proof. I understand, sir. Do you? Because if you're wrong, if these are rocks or minerals or exhausted men seeing things, then tomorrow we assault anyway, blind, and Marines die. Caldwell met his eyes. I'm not wrong. How can you be sure? The pattern matches our casualties. Every confirmed kill originated from one of these positions. The spacing is tactical, professional. Someone designed this. Hayes studied the map, silent, thinking. I want proof before I stake careers and lives on glass reflections. Caldwell had expected this. Let me prove it. Pick one position. We call in one round. If they return fire, we know. You're asking me to waste ammunition on a test. I'm asking you to spend one shell to save 200 lives. Long silence. Hayes stared at the map, at Charlie 7, the position that killed Martinez, that started everything. Charlie 7. Yes, sir. You're certain someone's there, as certain as I can be. Hayes picked up the field phone, dialed artillery. Fire mission, grid Charlie 7, single round, HE, time on target 5 minutes. He hung up, looked at Caldwell. If nothing happens, we never had this conversation. Understood, sir. They waited. 5 minutes stretched like hours. Everything balanced on this single moment. The artillery round went out with a sound like tearing canvas. Came down on Charlie 7 with a crack that echoed across ridges. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Hayes reached for the phone, then return fire came. 3 rifles, muzzle flashes exactly where Caldwell marked. Tracers reaching toward American lines, angry, defiant, proof. Hayes slowly lowered the phone, stared at Caldwell. Son of a bitch. You were right. Sir, we need to expand this. Train squad leaders, build comprehensive map before regiment forces our hand. Hayes stood, walked to map, studied it with new eyes. How long? Tomorrow. By 1800 tomorrow, complete picture. Regiment wants attack at dawn day after tomorrow. Then we'll be ready. Hayes looked at him, really looked. Field promotion. Staff Sergeant Caldwell, effective immediately. You need authority to coordinate this. Sir, You've got until 1800 tomorrow. Get me that map, get me targets, get me something that shows we're not bleeding for nothing. Yes, sir. And Mac? Hayes's voice softened. Morrison would be proud. Caldwell's throat tightened, nodded. Outside, the September night pressed down. Hot, humid, thick. Caldwell walked back to his position, stopped halfway, sat on coral outcropping, pulled out Morrison's dog tags, rubbed them between fingers. Promoted, he whispered. Your death bought me a promotion. No answer, just jungle sounds and distant guns. Eventually he stood, walked back, found his team waiting. Well, Tenbrook asked. Approved. We expand tomorrow, train squad leaders, full map by 1800. Test worked, Davies asked. They fired back, 3 rifles, exactly where Petrova said. So we were right. We were right. Thayer pulled out his journal, started writing by moonlight. What are you writing? That tonight, for first time since landing, I think we might survive this. Caldwell didn't correct him, didn't say survival was never guaranteed. Let them have this moment. Morning would come soon enough. Dawn broke red over Palaliu. Caldwell woke at 05:30 with maybe 2 hours sleep. Dreams filled with Morrison's face, with Martinez falling, with muzzle flashes from positions that shouldn't exist. By 0600, he'd gathered 6 squad leaders in a clearing behind the lines. Hard men, veterans, skeptical eyes that had seen too much to believe easy answers. Sergeant Patterson spoke first. "An enlisted man teaching us tactics, this better be good, Caldwell." Caldwell didn't rise to it, just spread the marked map. "3 days ago we landed, told it would take 4 days. We've lost 7 men and gained maybe 1,000 yards. Anyone want to guess why? Silence. Because we can't see them. We've been fighting an invisible enemy, clearing positions that were never clear, advancing into kill zones we didn't know existed." He tapped the map. 73 positions marked. "Yesterday afternoon my team identified these, all invisible to conventional observation." "How?" Patterson asked. "Glass reflections." Someone snorted. "You found 73 positions by looking for sparkles." Caldwell kept his voice level. "Every observation post needs optics. Optics means glass. Glass, especially damaged glass, reflects light differently than rock or vegetation. Right time of day, right sun angle, those reflections become visible. And you expect us to believe this? I expect you to test it this afternoon, 1630 hours. When sun drops low, you'll see for yourself." Tenbrook stepped forward. "Back home tracking elk for rich men who couldn't track their own shadow. You know how you spot a deer in heavy brush, light catching their eyes. That specific reflection, different from everything else." He looked at Patterson. "Same principle, different application." Petrova added quietly, "Binocular lens is convex, reflects differently than flat rifle scope. Different glass, different reflection character. If you pay attention, you can tell what equipment they're using." Caldwell pulled out a mirror, caught morning sun, flashed it across their faces. Intact glass, sharp, clean. He took out broken glass, scratched, fractured, caught light again. The reflection scattered, diffused, lasted longer. Damaged glass, from near misses, from concussion, from 3 days of fire, scatters light in multiple directions, easier to spot because reflection is visible from more angles and lasts longer. Patterson leaned forward. "Show me again." The squad leaders crowded around, seeing the difference, skepticism becoming understanding. Caldwell spent the next hour on procedure, optimal times, sun angles, observation posts with cover and sight lines, how to distinguish glass from minerals, how to record data, how to compile findings. Thayer handled paperwork, grid systems, recording formats. Davies ran communications between groups. By 0800, 6 teams briefed, 6 sectors, coordinated observation across 800 meters. Patterson approached as others dispersed. "If this works, you'll save a lot of lives. And if it doesn't, we die tomorrow anyway. At least we tried something." Captain Hayes stood in his command post staring at the same map Caldwell had shown the squad leaders. 73 positions, each one a potential death trap, each one invisible until yesterday. His executive officer, Lieutenant Morrison, no relation to the sergeant who died, pointed to the marked defensive line. "If these are accurate, sir, tomorrow's assault would have been a massacre." "I know. Regiment won't like being told to wait." Hayes's expression hardened. "Regiment isn't here. I am. And I'm not walking Marines into a meat grinder because some staff officer wants his timeline met." He picked up the field phone, dialed division headquarters, waited. "This is Captain Hayes, 1st Battalion. I'm requesting postponement of tomorrow's assault pending intelligence development." Pause. "Yes, sir, I understand the timeline. But we've identified a significant defensive network that—" Longer pause. "Sir, with respect, I have 73 confirmed positions that were invisible until yesterday. If we assault without proper preparation—" He listened, face tightening. Understood, sir. 24 hours. I'll have comprehensive intelligence by then. He hung up, looked at Lieutenant Morrison. Division's giving us 1 day. After that, we attack whether we're ready or not. That's not enough time to... It's what we have. Get me Caldwell. 1630 hours came with the same merciless sun, but this time 8 observation teams deployed across the line. Professional, coordinated, each team knowing exactly what to look for. Caldwell positioned himself differently today, not at an observation post, at the compilation point with Hayes, watching runners arrive, building the map in real time. Hayes stood beside him, watching, judging, betting his career on glass reflections and sunlight. The first report came at 1642. Runner arrived breathless. Echo team, grid Echo 12. Definite glass reflection, 350 meters, natural rock formation. Caldwell marked it. Hayes watched. 1658. Delta team, grid Delta 7, multiple reflections, at least 3 positions close proximity. 1703. Bravo team, grid Bravo 4, strong reflection, 4 seconds duration. The reports flooded in, runners arriving every few minutes. Caldwell plotting positions, cross-referencing, building the picture. Hayes watched the map fill with marks, like revealing a constellation that had always been there. How many? He asked quietly. Caldwell counted. So far 83. Still have another hour of good light. 1720. Charlie team. Grids Charlie 9, 11, 14, 6 positions total. 1735. Fox team. 9 positions identified. Tenbrook arrived from his observation post, face grim. Our sector. 18 positions. 18. Hayes studied the density. In some areas, positions separated by barely 15 meters. Overlapping fields of fire, mutually supporting. Professional defensive design, 1755. Last reports coming in, light fading, 1800. Caldwell called end of observation. He tallied the final count, cross-referenced overlaps, eliminated duplicates. Total unique positions, he said slowly, 137. Hayes stared. 137, in less than a mile. Patterson arrived, looked at the map. Jesus Christ, we would have walked into a meat grinder. Density in some sectors, Caldwell pointed, is 7 positions per 100 meters, 1 position every 45 feet. Hayes traced tomorrow's planned assault route, counted. 19 positions minimum. A reinforced platoon through there. 30 casualties, Caldwell said quietly. Maybe more. First 5 minutes. Hayes sat down. The field chair creaked. He looked older than 35. Get this to division, now! The War Council convened at 1900. Hayes, his officers, Caldwell, division staff. The marked map spread like an indictment. 137 positions, each confirmed by multiple teams, each a testament to how blind they'd been. Major Donovan from division staff studied the map professionally. 3-layer defense, forward positions here, supporting positions deeper, command and reserve at rear. Mutually supporting, Hayes added. Kill zones designed to channel us into overlapping fire. Whoever designed this studied previous engagements, Donovan continued. Learned from Japanese defeats. This is sophisticated. Colonel Nakagawa, Caldwell said. Island commander. Been here months. Had time to prepare. And used it well. Donovan looked at Hayes. Captain, I'm recommending approval of your request. Targeted preparatory fire on these positions, then methodical advance, not broad front assault. A staff major objected. Sir, that'll take weeks. But we'll take the island, and Marines will survive to do it. Donovan made the call. Division approved. Regiment would have to wait. Hayes dismissed the council. Officers dispersed. Caldwell started to leave. Staff Sergeant. He turned. Hayes stood alone. You just changed this campaign, you know that. Just found a way to see them, sir. That's everything. Hayes paused. Get some rest. Tomorrow we find out if this actually works in combat. Caldwell walked back to his position. Found his team waiting around a small fire. Thayer writing. Tenbrook cleaning weapons. Petrova staring at ridgelines. Davies checking ammunition. Captain Hayes requested preparatory support, Caldwell told them. Targeting positions we identified, then we advance. Methodical, using the map. When? Davies asked. Dawn. They sat in silence. Tomorrow would tell if their discovery meant anything, if glass reflections could actually save lives. Thayer closed his journal. Sarge, my brother David, when he fought in Europe, think he faced something like this. Different terrain, same invisible enemy, same fear. If we make it through, I'm writing it all down, everything. You already are. The night deepened. Stars emerged, jungle whispered. Somewhere out there in 137 positions, Japanese defenders waited, watching. But the Americans knew where they were now, could see the invisible, could plan instead of stumble. Caldwell pulled out Morrison's dog tags. Last time he'd touched them before tomorrow. Tomorrow, he whispered. Tomorrow we see if this works. Dawn came fast and red. Preparatory fire started at 0700. Not broad bombardment, surgical. Each marked position receiving attention. The sound rolled across ridges like sustained thunder. Caldwell watched through binoculars, checking positions against his map, seeing coral explode. Jungle burn, glass shatter. Observers die or flee. 45 minutes. Then silence. Ringing. Absolute. 0750. Post-artillery scan, checking which positions still showed activity. Of 137 positions, only 43 showed any reflection. The rest silent. Dark. Abandoned or destroyed. Good odds. 0800. Advance began. Hayes had reorganized the approach. No broad front, methodical movement, isolating positions one at a time, using knowledge to survive. Caldwell moved with first element, 30 Marines including Davies, objective grid Delta 4, known position marked on map. They approached carefully. Caldwell called out to Davies on point. 12 o'clock, 15 meters up, behind vine cluster, firing port maybe 6 inches. Davies stopped, stared. Jesus, I see it. We walked past this yesterday. Neutralized with grenades. Quick, efficient, no casualties. On to the next. By noon, 31 positions confirmed and addressed. The advance that had been impossible became methodical, professional, almost routine. Davies moved with confidence now, understanding what they faced, seeing what had been invisible. Thayer wrote during a break. Voiceover later would quote, "It's like someone turned on lights. We were fighting blind, now we see." But at 1400, Caldwell noticed something troubling. Position Bravo 8, previously marked, now showing no reflection. He mentioned it to Tenbrook. Abandoned or covered. They investigated, found it still occupied, found cloth draped over damaged binoculars. The Japanese were adapting. They know, Caldwell said. They figured out we're spotting the glass. They brought evidence to Hayes. Hayes processed quickly. How do we counter? Continuous observation throughout the day. Catch them when they uncover to observe. Multiple angles. If they angle away from one team, another might catch them. They're learning, Hayes said. Just like us. Yes, sir. It's a race now. Hayes smiled. Grim. Then we better win. That afternoon, Caldwell established rotating schedules. Teams scanning every 2 hours, looking for brief exposures, brief mistakes. It worked, partially, caught some, missed others. The cat and mouse had begun. By evening, 65 positions confirmed and addressed of original 137. Casualties 3 wounded, 0 killed. Compared to 7 dead in first 3 days, it was a miracle. That night, exhausted, the team gathered. "They're getting smarter," Tenbrook observed. "So are we," Caldwell replied. Thayer wrote September 16th. "We have a method, but the enemy is learning too." Davies cleaned his rifle, still eager, still believing they'd won. Petrova looked at ridgelines, at positions found, at positions still hidden. "How long will this campaign last?" Caldwell remembered the briefing. 4 days. Longer than 4 days. Tenbrook laughed. "Dark. No shit." Somewhere out there, Colonel Nakagawa was adjusting tactics, covering glass, changing positions, adapting. And here Marcus Caldwell was doing the same, refining technique, finding new angles, staying ahead. The battle wasn't over, wasn't close, but they had a chance now, a real chance. September 17th dawned with the same brutal heat, but something had changed in the air. Not temperature, not terrain, something intangible. The Americans moved with purpose now. The Japanese defenders for the first time seemed uncertain. Caldwell stood at his observation post, binoculars pressed to eyes, scanning grid Fox 14. Third time in 2 hours. Nothing. No reflection. Just rock and vegetation and morning sun climbing toward Murderous. Beside him, Thayer recorded null results. Time 0847. Sector Fox 14. Status negative contact. "They're disciplined," Thayer said, "keeping everything covered." Caldwell lowered binoculars, eyes burning from constant scanning. 3 days since discovery. 3 days of grinding advance. 3 days watching Japanese defensive network adapt in real time. First day had been almost easy. Positions identified, positions neutralized, 65 in 12 hours, casualties minimal, victory tasting sweet after days of bitter defeat. But the enemy had learned fast. Now glass reflections appeared maybe once every 4 hours. Brief glimpses when an observer got careless. Moments so fleeting that if you blinked, you missed them. The war of invisibility had become a war of patience. A runner arrived, young private, face streaked with coral dust. "Staff Sergeant, Captain Hayes needs you, says urgent." Hayes stood over a field table, Lieutenant Morrison beside him, but they weren't alone. A patrol leader, Sergeant Wilson, stood over something spread across the table. Documents. Japanese documents. "Morning patrol found an abandoned command post," Hayes said without preamble. "Grid Echo 9. They evacuated fast, left materials behind." He gestured to the documents. Maps, diagrams, text in characters Caldwell couldn't read. "We found someone who can read some of this. Corpsman Chen studied in San Francisco before the war. Says his Japanese is rough, but he can get the gist." Hayes pointed to one diagram. Even without reading Japanese, Caldwell could see what it showed. A network. Lines connecting circles, dozens of circles. "Tunnel map," Hayes said. "Connecting defensive positions. Look at the density." Caldwell leaned closer, counted symbols, felt his stomach drop. 73 positions shown on this diagram alone, and it only covered maybe a third of the defensive network. Jesus! "There's more." Hayes's voice was granite. "Chen says this document describes a planned counterattack. Let us advance. Let us think we found all positions, then hit us from the rear, from positions we thought were cleared." Caldwell felt cold that went beyond fear, went to professional respect for an enemy who thought 3 steps ahead. Nakagawa knew we'd figure something out eventually, so he built in redundancy, depth, a trap. "How close were we?" Lieutenant Morrison asked. to walking into it. Caldwell compared the Japanese diagram to their planned advance routes, saw where they would have intersected. Tomorrow's advance, the one we planned before finding this, would have taken us through here. He pointed. 8 unmarked positions, minimum, probably more using tunnels. Hayes sat down, aged 10 years in 5 seconds. We would have lost a company. Yes, sir. Silence filled the command post. Outside, artillery rumbled, the usual sounds of war. Hayes finally spoke. Mac, I need you to find the rest. All of them. Every position, every tunnel entrance, everything. Sir, at current rate, that'll take weeks. Then find a faster way. Caldwell stared at the diagram, at the sophistication, at the genius that demanded respect even as it promised death. His mind worked the problem. Japanese were covering optics, but they had to observe, had to see American positions to coordinate defense, which meant brief exposures, brief vulnerabilities. The answer came from Petrova's world, from photography, from understanding light. Multiple angles, Caldwell said. They're angling optics away from our main line, away from where they expect observation, but if we establish posts at 45-degree angles, watch from directions they're not expecting. They might not redirect. Hayes finished. It's a gamble, but faster than waiting for mistakes. Do it. You have 72 hours. After that, regiment is forcing general advance, whether we're ready or not. 72 hours became a race against time, and an enemy that refused to stay visible. Caldwell deployed observation teams in an arc, not a line, an arc that wrapped around target ridges. Teams at 30, 45, 60-degree angles. Overlapping coverage, multiple perspectives. Petrova explained it using photography terms. Same subject, different light, different angles. You see things from one position invisible from another. Applied to war, it meant glass reflections invisible from front might be visible from flank. September 19th. New observation pattern began. First results came at 0920, far left flank team, 45 degrees from main line, spotted 3 positions invisible from front. Glass angled away from American positions but catching morning light from new angle. By noon, 6 more. By evening, 22 total. Caldwell compiled data, cross-referenced with captured diagram, started seeing full picture. Started understanding true scope of Nakagawa's defensive masterpiece. Over 200 positions. Layered defense. Mutually supporting. Tunnel networks allowing rapid reinforcement. A fortress disguised as an island. September 20th brought new challenges and new costs. Tenbrook's observation post took sniper fire at 1500 hours, single shot, professional. Tenbrook went down hard. Caldwell reached him 30 seconds later. Found Tenbrook sitting up, holding left shoulder, blood seeping through fingers, face pale but eyes sharp. Just a graze, Tenbrook growled. Let me see. Round had cut a groove across the top of shoulder. Deep enough to bleed. Not deep enough to kill, lucky. Corpsman, I don't need... You need stitches. But even bleeding, Tenbrook's instincts hadn't failed. Mac, I saw where it came from. Grid Hotel 3. No glass reflection. They're using iron sights. The realization clicked. Some positions had optics, those they could find, but some used basic iron sights. No glass, no reflection, invisible to their method. The limitation had teeth. Caldwell helped Tenbrook to aid station, left him with Corpsman. Returned to his post, staring at the map with new understanding. They could find maybe 80% of positions, the optically equipped ones. But 20% would remain invisible, hidden by simplicity instead of sophistication. 80% was better than 0, but it meant advance would never be completely safe. That night, Caldwell visited Tenbrook, found him sitting up, arm in sling, already restless. Doc says I'm fine, can return tomorrow. Doc says you need rest. Screw rest, we've got work to do. Caldwell sat beside him. Bear, you took a round because we're pushing too hard. We're pushing because Morrison died, because Martinez died, because 7 men died blind. We're not blind anymore, so we keep pushing. That round could have killed you, but it didn't. Tenbrook met his eyes. We found a way to see them, Mac. First time in this whole damn war we've had an advantage. We don't give that up because I caught some lead. Caldwell nodded slowly. Tomorrow, rest tonight, tomorrow. September 21st brought expansion and refinement. The multi-angle observation technique was producing results. Positions invisible from one direction revealed from another. The map filled with marks. 212 positions confirmed, 230 suspected, but the work was exhausting. Constant scanning, brief windows of opportunity, enemy adapting in real time. Davies distinguished himself during this period, young, eager, but learning fast. He spotted 7 positions personally, developed an eye for the specific character of reflection that indicated damaged glass versus intact glass. It's like music, he told Caldwell one evening. Once you learn to hear the difference between notes, you can't unhear it. Caldwell saw potential in the kid, recommended him for corporal. Hayes approved. Davies beamed when Caldwell told him, "Thank you, Sarge. I won't let you down. I know you won't." But war doesn't care about potential or promises. September 22nd. Caldwell stood before a room full of colonels and majors, regiment headquarters, rear area, where air was cooler and coffee tasted like coffee and death seemed abstract. He felt out of place. Enlisted man, coral dust in hair, uniform stained with sweat and blood, standing before men who made decisions that sent thousands to die. But Hayes had insisted. They need to hear it from you. So Caldwell stood, presented findings, used Petrova's photographs, used marked maps, used captured Japanese documents. The principle is simple, he explained. Glass reflects light differently than natural materials. Damaged glass even more distinctly by systematically scanning at optimal angles during horizontal light periods. We identify concealed positions otherwise invisible. Colonel Davis asked, "This works consistently?" "Yes, sir. We've identified over 200 positions using this method, confirmed by multiple teams, cross-referenced with enemy documents. Limitations." Caldwell appreciated the question. Smart question. Weather dependent. Needs some sunlight. Doesn't work on positions using only iron sights. Enemy is adapting, covering optics, angling glass away, but we counter-adapt, multiple observation angles, continuous scanning, patience. Casualty impact, Hayes answered. First 3 days, 7 killed. Last 8 days using this technique, 1 killed, 4 wounded. Casualty reduction approximately 70%. Silence around table. Men doing math, calculating what 70% meant across divisions, across campaigns. "We want this documented," Davis said. "Training materials produced, disseminated across theater. Other units face similar challenges. This could save thousands." "Yes, sir," Caldwell replied. "You'll be debriefed by intelligence. Your technique will be standardized, made into doctrine." Caldwell thought about Morrison, about Martinez, about 7 men who died before they figured it out, about thousands who might not die because they had. "Understood, sir." The briefing concluded, officers dispersed. Caldwell stood alone looking at maps of an island supposed to take 4 days. Hayes approached. "You did good, Mac. Just showed them what worked. You showed them how to see the invisible. That's genius." Caldwell didn't feel like genius. Felt tired. Felt old beyond 28 years. "When do we resume advance?" "Tomorrow. Using expanded observation network. Targeting identified positions. Slow, methodical." "And when regiment gets impatient?" Hayes smiled. Grim. "Let them. I've got results, got proof, got a technique that works. They can wait." September 25th arrived with same heat, same coral dust, Same war that never paused. But today felt different. Today they were hitting Nakagawa's keep, ridge complex anchoring Japanese defensive network, position from which Nakagawa himself supposedly directed operations. Heart of resistance. Intelligence estimated 15 to 20 positions defending the ridge. Caldwell's observation effort had identified 12 with certainty. 3 more suspected. Good enough. Better than charging blind. Assault began at 0600 artillery prep, 30 minutes on identified positions, not to destroy. Hardened caves couldn't be destroyed, but to suppress, keep heads down, create smoke and confusion. 0630, barrage lifted. 0635. First wave moved out. Caldwell led his team, Thayer Tenbrook with arms still in sling but refusing to stay back, Petrova with camera documenting everything, plus Davies now wearing corporal stripes and 7 others. 13 men against a fortress. They approached grid Kilo 7. Known position. Marked 2 days ago when afternoon light caught damaged binocular glass. Caldwell called out to Davies on point. 11 o'clock, 20 meters up, behind overhang, port maybe 6 inches wide, horizontal slit. Davies stopped, stared. Got it. Jesus, we would have walked right past. Yesterday you would have. Today you won't. They suppressed with rifle fire. Grenades arced up, detonated inside cave. Return fire stopped. 1 position neutralized. On to next. Advance was methodical, careful, nothing like desperate charges of first days. Every position location known, every approach calculated, every Marine understanding the threat. By 0905 positions cleared. By 1109. The ridge that had seemed impregnable was falling position by position. But Kilo 7 had a surprise. Caldwell's team approached what should have been abandoned, previously scouted, previously marked as likely destroyed. They were 15 meters from cave mouth when firing port opened, when machine gun spoke, when Davies went down hard. Caldwell hit dirt, rounds snapping overhead. Tenbrook dragged Davies to cover despite his wounded shoulder. Blood. Too much blood. Corpsman! Thayer screamed. Caldwell low-crawled to Davies, saw wounds, chest, abdomen, the kind that didn't survive. Davies looked up, eyes already fading. Thought it was clear. Easy, Corpsman's coming. But Davies was already somewhere else. The corpsman arrived, checked pulse, shook his head. Caldwell felt rage replace fear, calculated rage. The kind that kept you sharp. He spotted firing port, small, barely visible, but now he knew where to look. Petrova, see it? I see it. Grenade, can you make the throw? Petrova pulled grenade, calculated angle, distance, time, mathematics of death. He threw, perfect arc, dropped through firing port. 3 seconds later, cave belched smoke and fire. Silence. Caldwell moved forward, checked position, found 2 dead Japanese soldiers, found weapons, found optics, binoculars with cloth cover removed. They'd been waiting, watching, patient. They adapted, Tenbrook said. Covered glass until we got close, then uncovered to fire, and we walked into it. Caldwell looked at Davies's body being carried back. Because we got confident. Careless. The young corporal who'd spotted 7 positions, who'd developed an eye for damaged glass, who'd had potential. Gone. Caldwell felt the weight of it. Another name, another face, another debt owed. Rest of assault continued with renewed caution. Every position treated as occupied. Every approach made assuming threat. By 1400 ridge secured. American flag raised. 12 positions cleared. Davies the only fatality. 3 wounded. Heavy cost, but lighter than 3 weeks ago. Lighter than without the method. Caldwell stood at summit, looked out across Palaliu, across coral ridges holding secrets, across jungle hiding death, across an island supposed to take 4 days, September 25th, 21 days since landing. Campaign would last another 2 months, would claim thousands, would become one of the most controversial operations of the Pacific War. But the glass reflection method had changed the math. Had reduced casualties by levels statisticians would later calculate precisely, had saved lives counted and uncounted. Thayer stood beside him, journal open, writing. What are you writing? That today we took a position that would have cost 50 men 3 weeks ago. Lost 1 man instead because of what we figured out. What we figured out together, Caldwell corrected. Petrova saw first flash. Tenbrook understood what it meant. You recorded everything. Davies spotted 7 positions himself. Hayes believed us. This wasn't 1 man. Thayer wrote that down too. They buried Davies that evening. Simple ceremony. Taps played on a dented bugle. Words spoken about courage and sacrifice and a young man who learned to see the invisible. Caldwell added Davies's name to the mental list he carried. Morrison, Martinez, Johnson, Lee. The others, now Davies. Debts that could never be fully repaid, only honored. October became November. Campaign ground on. Glass reflection method spread across division. Other companies adopted it, refined it, added variations. Casualties dropped. Advance accelerated. Not fast, never fast, but steady, professional. Caldwell was pulled from line duty late October, assigned to divisional training, teaching technique to newly arrived units, demonstrating grid systems and optimal observation times. The irony wasn't lost. He'd started as training instructor at Camp Pendleton, now training instructor on Peleliu. Different content, same mission, teaching Marines to survive. November 24th, Peleliu declared secured, 73 days, 19 days longer than entire Guadalcanal campaign, almost 10 times longer than predicted 4 days. Final accounting showed glass reflection method helped identify over 200 concealed positions. Military analysts would later estimate technique saved 1,500 American lives, 1,500 men who went home instead of dying on coral ridges. Caldwell received Bronze Star in ceremony attended by his team. Hayes pinned it on, said words about exceptional tactical intelligence and meritorious service. Caldwell looked at Thayer, Tenbrook, Petrova, at men who'd actually made it work. Should go to them, he said quietly. Goes to all of you, Hayes replied. But you put it together. Take the recognition. You earned it. That night, Caldwell sat alone, Bronze Star in hand, thinking about Morrison, about Davies, about 7 lives lost before they figured it out. 1,500 saved, 7 lost. Math was clear, success undeniable, but Davies was still dead, Morrison still dead, Martinez still dead. Success always had a cost. December 1944. Caldwell shipped stateside, reassigned to Marine Corps Training Command, Camp Pendleton, full circle. Teaching next-generation techniques developed in blood and coral dust. He taught about glass reflections and optimal light angles and systematic observation, taught patience and precision and how to see what was meant to stay hidden, taught survival. The war ended 9 months later. Caldwell never returned to combat, spent remaining months teaching, training, preparing Marines who never needed what he taught because war ended first. He considered it the best duty he ever had. Epilogues. Robert Bear Tenbrook went home January 1945. Leg wound from late November finally healed enough for discharge. Purple Heart returned to Montana, returned to mountains and elk and rich men who couldn't track shadows. He guided hunts for 40 years, occasionally told stories about the Pacific, about an island supposed to take 4 days, about learning to see light reflect off glass in ways that saved lives. He died in 2000, age 82, surrounded by family, mountains visible through window. Daniel Petrova survived Peleliu without serious injury. Returned Chicago March 45, used GI Bill for photography school, built career photographing architecture, buildings, light, shadow, reflection. His photographs from Peleliu, including images of glass reflections that started everything, were donated to National Archives in '89. Primary source material. Historical record. He died in 97. Age 76. Obituary mentioned war service. Mentioned technique he helped develop. Mentioned lives saved. Thomas Thayer received telegram April 45. Brother David found alive. Liberated from POW camp by Soviets. Emaciated, traumatized, but alive. They reunited in San Francisco that July. Brothers who'd both survived their wars, both carried scars, both carried stories. Thayer's journal was donated to Marine Corps Historical Division in '89. Same year as Petrova's photographs. His September 14th entry describing discovery of glass reflections became required reading at officer training. He taught high school history in Boston for 35 years. Guest lectured at West Point and Annapolis about Paleolu, about innovation under pressure, about how small observations could change campaigns. He died in 2008, age 84. Funeral included full military honors. Journal quoted in eulogy. William Hayes stayed in the Marines until 1956. Promoted to major after Paleolu, lieutenant colonel by Korea. His defense of Caldwell's technique, his refusal to assault blindly despite pressure from regiment, became case study in military leadership courses. The scar on his face never faded. Neither did memory of the men he'd saved by trusting an enlisted Marine's crazy idea about glass reflections. He retired to Virginia. Worked as consultant for Marine Corps doctrine development, helped write the manual that codified observation techniques for future generations. He died in 1994. Age 85. At his funeral, Caldwell gave the eulogy, talked about a captain who believed in glass reflections when it would have been easier to dismiss them, who bet his career on an enlisted man's insight, who saved 200 lives by refusing to follow orders blindly. Hayes would have appreciated that. Marcus Caldwell stayed in Marines until 52, taught throughout. Korea brought new applications of the technique, winter conditions, mountain warfare. Different terrain, but same principles. He retired as Master Sergeant, settled San Diego, worked as civilian firearms instructor, quiet life. Simple life. Never sought attention for Paleolu, but in '82 a military historian found him, interviewed him for documentary, asked about that afternoon in September 44, about glass reflections and sunlight angles in 73 positions identified in 2 hours. Caldwell spoke carefully, precisely, giving credit to his team, to Petrova's observation, to Tenbrook's understanding, to Thayer's documentation, to Davies's sharp eye, to Hayes's belief. The interviewer asked what he wanted people to remember. Caldwell thought about Morrison, about Martinez, about Davies, about 7 men who died before they figured it out, about 1,500 who lived because they did, that sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from the smallest observations. A young photographer noticed a glint of light. A hunter remembered tracking elk. A kid with a journal wrote it all down. A corporal learned to distinguish between reflections. We were just doing our jobs, but together we found a way to see what was meant to be invisible. He paused, chose words carefully. In war, the most valuable weapon isn't always the biggest gun. Sometimes it's just the ability to see what others miss. The method. The broken glass method became doctrine, formalized, taught, evolved. Modern military surveillance still incorporates principles Caldwell and his team discovered. Different technology. Thermal imaging instead of naked eye. Drones instead of binoculars. But core concept remains. Glass reflects. Light reveals. Patience wins. The technique is taught at every advanced reconnaissance school. At sniper training. At special operations courses. Different names now. Different applications. but lineage traces back to Peleliu, to September 14th, 44, to 4 Marines who looked at sunlight and saw salvation. The island. Coral ridges of Peleliu are quiet now. Jungle has reclaimed terrain contested with such ferocity. Caves that held defenders are empty. Firing ports overgrown. Island returned to peace. But in Marine Corps museums, Caldwell's bronze star sits in display case. Next to Thayer's journal, next to Petrova's photographs, next to Hayes's citation, next to piece of broken glass mounted on black velvet, next to Davies's corporal stripes. The plaque reads, "The Broken Glass Method, September 1944, developed by Staff Sergeant Marcus Caldwell and team, estimated 1,500 American lives saved." Visitors read it, move on, most never understanding what those words mean, what they cost, what they bought. But sometimes a young Marine stops, reads carefully, studies photographs, looks at broken glass, understands that somewhere in that simple reflection is a lesson about observation and innovation and desperate ingenuity of men who refuse to die blind. The lesson survives. The method survives. The memory survives. Final reunion. Caldwell died in 2006, age 90, quiet death, peaceful death, surrounded by family who knew some of his story but not all. At his funeral, 3 old men attended, strangers to family. Old, frail, but standing straight despite age and time. They wore Marine dress blues, medals on chests, tears in eyes. After ceremony, they approached Caldwell's daughter. "We never met your father," one said, "but we're alive because of what he taught us. Korea, 51. His technique saved our platoon." They saluted the coffin, old hands trembling but precise, then left. 3 lives saved by method developed 60 years earlier. 3 more debts paid. 3 more pieces of legacy confirmed. The daughter found a note in her father's effects later, written in his hand, dated September 14th, 44. It said simply, "Morrison, found them. All of them. You can rest now." Below that, newer ink, different dates. Martinez, 1944. Davies, 1944. Tenbrook, 2000. Petrova, 1997. Thayer, 2008. Hayes, 1994. A list of debts, a list of friends, a list of men who saw the invisible and lived to tell about it, or didn't live, but mattered anyway. The note was buried with him. Some debts go beyond the grave. Epilogue. The lesson. Sun sets over Peleliu now. Same sun that rose in 44, same light that revealed hidden positions, same physics that saved lives. Tourists visit sometimes, walk beaches, look at ridges, see beauty instead of death. They take photographs, capture light, never knowing they're using principles that once meant difference between life and death. Never knowing that broken glass and sunlight and desperate innovation once changed the math of war. The island remembers, the coral remembers, the caves remember, and somewhere in archives, in training manuals, in doctrine that trains every Marine, the method survives. The ability to see what others miss, the patience to wait for right light, the courage to trust observation over assumption, the innovation to turn a photographer's eye into a warrior's tool. Morrison's debt paid in full, Martinez's sacrifice given meaning, Davies's death not in vain, and Caldwell's legacy living on in every Marine who learns to see the invisible. The broken glass method, born in desperation, refined in blood, surviving in memory. One afternoon in September that changed everything. One glint of light that saved 1,500 lives. One lesson that echoes across 80 years. See what others miss. Question what seems impossible. Innovate or die. And never ever forget the cost of lessons learned. The story ends, but the legacy remains, forever reflected in light on broken glass, forever remembered, forever honored. In the museum at Quantico, a new exhibit opened in 2012. Interactive display. Visitors can look through replica binoculars, see how damaged glass reflects differently than intact glass. Experience the moment of discovery. Children press buttons, watch animations, learn about angles and light, never knowing that behind the science, behind the interactive displays, behind the sanitized museum presentation, there were men, real men, who died, who bled, who learned to see the invisible because the alternative was dying blind. But sometimes an old Marine visits, walks slowly past the displays, stops at the broken glass case, stands at attention despite age, salutes, and for a moment in that gesture, in that remembrance, the debt is acknowledged, the sacrifice honored, the lesson passed forward one more time, one more generation, forever.